In the heart of the Meridian Citadel, 3 centuries of tradition dictated that only 34% of candidates would ever walk out with a commission. 47 candidates stood in the observation hall that morning, and Odyssey Vanis recognized 46 of the species represented. The 47th was a human named Riley, a medical specialist candidate from a Class 12 Deathworld who was currently chewing on a plastic pen cap. Vanis watched his own translucent stomach begin a slow, wet churn. Something about the way she couldn't find her registration badge made the liquid in his gut rotate with a sudden, localized panic. You'll want to hear how this ends. Trust me on that. 11 days earlier, the station's water recycler had broken for the 3rd time that week, and Vanis had been obsessing over his transfer paperwork. He wanted to be clear, for the record, that he followed every protocol, every single one. He was a cultural liaison, a professional observer who preferred the safety of a clipboard and a predictable data set. He even had documentation prepared for his mate regarding their offspring's upcoming academic ceremony. The facts were simple. He was supposed to watch, document, and remain entirely unremarkable. Then he read entry 47 on the candidate list. During the pre-qualification briefing, Riley dropped her notepad twice. She asked Cadet Velcris, a Belvroni crystalline whose body literally developed audible hairline cracks under social pressure, to hold her pen while she retied her hair. Vanis noted the interaction with a growing sense of professional bias. He had spent years arguing that Deathworld classifications were exaggerated. The board chair, a massive Orozen named Draze, entered the hall with an exoskeleton that gleamed like polished obsidian. He announced 5 sequential tests calibrated to galactic maximum difficulty. Riley raised her hand and asked if this was the practice round. Dre's exoskeleton clicked with sharp, rhythmic annoyance. Velcris developed a second crack. Vanis' stomach churned so visibly he had to hide it behind his tablet. The toxicology test began with 30 unmarked vials. While every other candidate calibrated their scanning arrays, Riley picked up the first vial and drank it. The qualification hall erupted into chaos of light and sound. Draze stood up so fast his chair hit the floor. Vanis' stomach completed a full, nauseating revolution that was perfectly visible through his skin. Riley waited 2 seconds, claimed it tasted like cough syrup, and moved to the next one. She identified all 30 compounds by taste in 4 minutes. It was at that precise moment that the silence in the room became heavy. During the environmental endurance phase, the chamber reached 100% intensity, a level that had already sent Velcris to the medical bay with structural fractures. Riley sat on the floor and did leg stretches. At one point, she yawned. Vanis ran the numbers, which he had triple-checked because the first 2 readings seemed like a calibration error, and realized she had consumed substances lethal to 23 species present while treating a planetary-level heatwave as a minor inconvenience. He noticed a stain on his sleeve. He focused on that stain for longer than was professionally appropriate because the reality inside the chamber was too much to process. Which meant the readings weren't wrong. The humans weren't just exceptional. They were operating on a biological scale the Citadel hadn't even designed a sensor to measure. The Predator response test featured a holographic Class 7 Apex Predator. Most candidates performed a controlled retreat to the safe zone. Riley did not retreat. She stood her ground and emitted a low, resonant growl from her chest that matched the Predator's own frequency. The simulation stuttered, then impossibly retreated from her. Dre's own exoskeleton developed a hairline fracture from the sheer shock of the event. Riley turned to the observation window and smiled. She told them not to worry. Vanis, for the record, worried much more after that. The tactical medical simulation didn't just test knowledge. It tested the capacity to care while the simulated world was burning. Vanis watched from the observation tier as Riley moved between 12 simulated patients, her hands steady even as the Yenti examiner's light patterns began to flash in a frantic, strobe-like sequence that usually signaled a complete nervous collapse. Vanis wanted to be clear, for the record, that he was following every protocol. Yet he found himself fixated on a minor scuff on the observation deck's floor. Someone should really buff that. It was a distraction, a necessary one, because watching a human treat a Belvroni crystalline fracture by improvising a pressure seal from a discarded nutrient packet was too much to process. The alarm for the fifth test cut him off. He steadied himself. He ran the scan again. The numbers were the same. The calm he had manufactured for his report collapsed. During the psychological resilience interview, Riley sat across from the qualification board and chewed on a fresh pen cap. She looked bored. Drays, the massive Orison chair, asked her about her greatest fear, expecting a confession of existential dread or planetary-scale terror. Riley thought for a moment, adjusted the plastic in her teeth, and admitted she was mostly worried about losing a patient or running out of coffee. Vanis felt his stomach perform a full, visible revolution that Drays ignored only out of professional courtesy. He had published 14 papers arguing that Deathworld biology was statistically insignificant. 14. He was looking at Riley, and he was thinking about early retirement. And now, in the silent boardroom of the Meridian Citadel, the tests were over. Vanis looked at the chewed pen cap Riley had left on the examination table, logged by the automated systems as Exhibit A. The board assumed it was a sophisticated stress-dampening device. It wasn't. Drays leaned forward, his heavy exoskeleton clicking with a sound that mirrored the tension in the room, and demanded an honest cultural assessment. Vanis realized then that he was at a crossroads. He could file the truth that Riley hadn't just passed the tests. She had rendered them obsolete, or he could protect the status quo. The human liver processes over 500 chemical functions simultaneously and neutralizes most organic toxins, a biological reality that explained why Riley had treated a lethal neurotoxin like a flavored beverage. On Earth, medical residents are often required to operate for 24 to 36 consecutive hours under extreme stress, a practice most galactic civilizations would classify as state-sanctioned torture. This wasn't just resilience. It was a dark mirror of what the galaxy considered impossible. Drays prompted him, his clicking voice deep and expectant. Vanis looked at his churning stomach, visible to everyone in the room, and then at the certificate of record-breaking achievement. He lied. He classified her as standard species variation within normal parameters. He did it because he had seen the way she smiled at the Belvroni cadet, and he knew that if the board realized what a human medic actually was, they wouldn't commission her. They would quarantine her. 3 months later, the Meridian Citadel's mess hall was noisier than it had been in 3 centuries. A new policy had been quietly drafted, ensuring that Deathworld candidates were tested on a separate, hidden scale. But Riley didn't know that. She was sitting at a central table, carefully cutting food for Velcris because his adhesive patches made his limb coordination difficult. She was the most dangerous organism on the station, a woman who could growl a Class 7 predator into submission. Yet she was currently arguing with a vending machine about the quality of its tea. Vanis watched from the shadows of the mezzanine. His stomach was still. He realized the most terrifying thing about humans wasn't their ability to survive toxins or pressure. It was the fact that they did it all while tripping over their own badges and worrying about pen caps. A chewed piece of plastic sat in a glass display case in the archives, labeled as a human stress indicator. In the mess hall, Riley,